Okay, well, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is in place and can see and hear me okay. My name is Bill Hutchins. I work at CKWS Global Kingston. I'm the moderator for tonight's meeting, which runs from 7 until about 9 p.m. I'd like to welcome everyone to this virtual all candidates meeting for Mayor of Kingston. And I'd also like to welcome those on your TV Cogeco, which is also televising this evening's meeting. So tonight's meeting is sponsored by the Coalition of Kingston Communities. And my role, just so everyone's clear, is to make sure that all the candidates will have equal time to make statements and answer questions. We have 3 of the 4 candidates participating this evening. The 4th candidate, Brian Patterson, has declined to participate. So first off, let's go over the ground rules for both the candidates and those of you wanting to ask a question of them. So for the candidates, each one will get 2 minutes for an opening statement and 2 minutes for their closing statements. The order of speakers will be based on your alphabetical last names. We'll start with the speaking order that way and then do the reverse order for closing statements. And during questions, I'm going to also keep rotating that alphabetical order so someone different will get a chance to respond first. I'll start with the first question myself, and the candidates will have 3 minutes to answer. So that's for the first question. And after that, the responses will be limited to 90 seconds. So I'm hoping that everyone in the audience will have some questions for the candidates this evening. And how that works, well, you can ask a question of a specific candidate or all of them, but in any case, I will give each of the candidates a chance to respond to that question. Priority will be given to people who actually live in the city of Kingston for asking questions. Please identify yourself. And if you just want to ask a general question of all the candidates, I'll go through that order. If you have a specific person in mind you'd like to answer first, that's fine too. And then I will invite the other 2 candidates for a chance to respond as well. You can use the chat function to identify yourself in the question, or just raise your hand in that raise hand feature in Zoom. And we will, I'll do my best to get to everyone, as many questions as possible. Otherwise, please leave your microphones on mute. Keeping time is important. So in addition to moderating, I'm going to do my best to keep everyone on time as well. So hope the rules are clear. Let's begin with the opening statements, 2 minutes each. And we're going to start with Tina Fraser. Go ahead, Tina.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me, Bill?
I can, yes.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm super happy to be here and to be able to speak to the public and to the other candidates tonight. This is a very important meeting. And I guess I just want to start by saying thank you to all the people who've been really respectful and have reached out to me. I've gotten probably over 1,000 different emails. And the correspondence are actually on my website if anyone is interested in reading those. So I just would like to introduce myself a little bit and talk about my skills and why I feel that I'm great for this position. So for my major accomplishments, I have over 10 consecutive years, over 10,000 hours of direct ESL planning and in-class instruction. So this gives me the ability to strategically organize and plan substantial amounts of complex data and information around core concepts. I have over 20 years experience in resource management and development with a diverse population of people. And these skills allow me to manage complex personalities and learning styles in a multitude of settings while building healthy professional relationships. I have completed over 6 years of post-secondary studies, both in university and college setting. So this has given me crystallized and fluid education, training, and real life experience. So I'm highly aware of the complexities and nature of people and of business. I have my own business license and a brand identity. I've been a digital entrepreneur for over 3 years, and I've created a multitude of digital content and effective communication plans for clients. Also, I have traveled to over 7 countries, and this has really humbled me and given me the ability to see people for who they are and what they can achieve. Lastly, I'm highly organized, creative, and I work very well on my own as I plan tasks weeks in advance. I would be pleased to represent my city and the citizens for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tina. Let's move on to Skyler McArthur-O'Bienes now. And please, your opening statement.
Hi, thanks, Bill. Thanks, Tina, as well. And I'd just like to say before I get started, I'm very, very happy that this event has been put on. It's unfortunate in this election campaign, it's been a little bit quiet, to be honest. This is the only official debate that's public. So please get your questions in and get them answered. So going forward, my name is Skyler McArthur-O'Bienes. I'm a born and raised Kingstonian. And I'm someone who has always sought broad perspectives throughout my entire life. In university, I always sought out international friends who could bring diverse ideas to build my competencies, and so that I could also provide in return interesting ideas and we could collaborate. Because collaboration to me is the essence for any good solution. So when I was in university, another thing that I did was I attended numerous case competitions. To me, these case competitions allowed me to hone in my collaborative skills, something that has served me extremely well in my personal and professional life. And that's something that I believe that a mayor desperately needs. We need collaboration. And it's something that, to me, when you're running to be a mayor, you need to be a champion for the people. You need to understand that you don't have everyone's perspective, but that you're willing to listen and you're willing to learn. And that continuous journey of learning is something I personally subscribe to. In terms of my involvement with the city, one of the things that I did while I was in university as well is I partook in the 2018 Mayor's Innovation Challenge. So that put in front of myself and one of my good friends from elementary school even, one of the most difficult problems the city was facing, which was community engagement. They sought a solution and they put it out to the community at large. And you know what? The community delivered. There was a lot of really great solutions that were pitched, and I'm proud to say that my friend and I was actually selected as a winner. So we were able to take that idea and run with it. And we were able to go into a very seamless transition into a startup incubator hosted out of Queen's University. So that it just demonstrates a perfect example of how citizens can get engaged. And that sort of engagement is what we need to succeed. My day job in my regular everyday while I'm campaigning is all about bringing efficiency into government. And that's what I'm looking to do, make it work better for the people that need it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Skyler. Let's move on now to Ivan Stoiljkovic.
Thank you.
2 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
I came to Kingston 22 years ago to study at Queen's, and all I've ever done since is fight for and with the marginalized and oppressed people in our city, the single mothers on welfare, the disabled, the indigenous, the immigrants, the poor, and the homeless. I've fed the poor and found ways to get them more money for food. I've advised tenants of their rights, and I've helped them fight their neglectful landlords in court. I've cooked soup and made sandwiches for our homeless friends. I've hauled wood for them to stay warm in the winter and to build their homes with, homes that mayor ordered razed to the ground. But I've also carefully studied municipal governance and municipal bylaws and municipal budgets, and I've found the money. I found where it's going, and I found where it should be going, and I've developed an ambitious but realistic plan for Kingston. I've built a mighty tenant union, and I've brought together a team of brilliant, educated, dedicated, diverse young people, tenants with pure hearts and beautiful minds to carry it out. This is People's Platform for Kingston. The mayor, in the meanwhile, has been taking donations from large landlords and developers, putting their representatives into influential positions in government and creating more and more misery and poverty for regular Kingstonians. I've watched him and his friends erect monumental structures without any regard for beauty or human factor. They've destroyed neighborhoods and thrown so many people out onto the street. They've built 4,500 for-profit market housing units, which have inflated the rents across the city, making people who were until only a few years ago proudly middle class have to choose between feeding their kids and paying rent. People tell me that what I want to do is impossible, that the rich and powerful will never allow it. There's no doubt that it won't be easy, but there's also no doubt that if I'm not elected, it will be million times harder for what we all want to see accomplished to get done. I'm the only mayoral candidate who is committed to ending homelessness in Kingston. Me becoming a mayor of Kingston will not be just that, me alone, one voice on the Council of 13. It will be me and tens of thousands of you insisting that no one die, that no one be hungry, and that no one is left behind.
Okay. Thank you very much, candidates. So let's move on to our first question of the evening. This was provided by the Coalition of Kingston Communities. It also, your answers are up to 3 minutes for this one, okay? So the question is, what is the biggest issue that you are hearing from constituents in the city? And what steps will you take to address this concern if you are elected? We're going to start with Skyler, and you have up to 3 minutes.
All right, sounds good. So the biggest issue, I think that there's been two that have really been pulling. It's one, been the disassociation with current government. They feel disengaged and feel that the current government is not listening. And the second one is affordability. Both of these are very challenging, and both of them have reverberating outcomes. The one that I guess I'll talk about for now is housing, because affordability in housing is just, it bleeds into all elements of the city. So when I've been talking with people, and this is not just something that I'm talking with people about, this is something I'm living every day. I'm stuck in what would be considered a rental trap, where you get into a rental, and this was pre-pandemic. My girlfriend and I, we both work full-time, and for us, it's challenging because we're in a house that right now, if we left, we would not be able to find anything even remotely comparable for the same price. And the dream of owning a home, which many people say, if you do all the right things, if you go to school and you do the proper work, you're going to get that. That's a dream that for many people has slipped away. And it's something that leads to more than just issues of loss of hope. It's that when people lose that hope, it changes the way that they perceive everything. So that to me is something that I think we need to focus on heavily, is housing. So to me, this is also an issue that is not unique to Kingston. So availability and affordability are the biggest pieces of the puzzle. But what we need to do is recognize that this is not something that can be solved with one fell swoop. And any elected government that promises that they'll fix this immediately is straight up lying. It's not possible to solve it right away, but we can make steps in the right direction. So one of the things I've heard when talking with people, that they live in their own home and they empathize with people in the community that aren't in a similar situation, but they don't know what they can do. So there's a couple of things. I would like to establish two main points that regular people can do to help. One is increasing the awareness of what can be done under the current and new zoning bylaws, allowing for carriage house style, building out additional rental units, and allowing people to use unused space. However, as well, we also need to keep in mind that that doesn't work for everyone. Not everyone has that space. So we can also have a community action fund that is separate from property taxes. If people want to donate, and it can go directly to the municipal coffers, that can be spent in a very transparent way to afford public housing for people. Another thing is we need to have intergovernmental collaboration. This is not something, like I said, that can be solved just in Kingston. We need to look outside, best practices and solutions that other communities are putting in place, and make sure that we have a unified strategy. So one thing is, if we're sharing best practices, then that means that supply can be built across the board in a unified manner, so that if we build a lot in Kingston, it's not just immediately getting infilled by demand.
Okay, Skyler, I'm gonna have to stop you there.
No worries, I could talk about it all night. Thank you.
Hey,
Thanks
you know
for
what? It's a complex issue, I know,
is.
and maybe you can get back to or expand on your points a little bit later. Okay.
I'm sure. Thanks, Bill.
No problem. Okay, let's move on to Ivan now with that question, and up to 3 minutes, Ivan.
From speaking to constituents across Kingston, it is clear that cost of living is the main issue people care about. Kingstonians are spending way too much of their income on housing, way more than what the Canada Housing and Mortgage Corporation considers affordable, which is 30% of one's income. This is true not only for tenants, but also for homeowners I've talked to. People are living in fear of losing their homes, and many are losing their homes and then ending up homeless at an alarming rate. I met a man the other day who's a construction worker raising a child and making $30 per hour, but paying $1,700 for rent in a cockroach-infested, dilapidated building. He's often made to choose between rent and food and is unable to provide proper nourishment for his kid. I also met a young woman who received an eviction notice for non-payment of rent and is now homeless. Her crime was working while on welfare. She got cut off Ontario Works because she was caught trying to supplement that meager fund, which is $700 a month, and make enough money to feed herself, and was then expected by the housing to pay full market rent. Kingston Frontenac Housing Corporation is fighting tenants rather than fighting for them. Large private landlords are, as a matter of policy, not maintaining their buildings because nobody's stopping them, and are actively seeking ways to evict as many tenants as possible in order to jack up rents and take in record profits. Municipal governments cannot force employers to raise wages or raise the rates of retirement pensions, welfare, or disability program, or try and keep up with the rise of cost of living. But we can and we will build rent-geared to income housing so that all those who are currently homeless or spending way too much of their income on rent can have a roof over their head. We can and we will transform the municipal social services and our public housing corporation from an enemy of the people into democratic entities that help the people. We can and we will get tough on negligent landlords whose buildings are infested by cockroaches and bedbugs. We can and we will create a free and healthy municipal food program for the people that will ensure that they're not going hungry. We can and we will improve and make free our public transportation services so that people can get to and from work without having to invest in cars and insurance and gas. We can and we will create municipal around $10 per day daycares like we used to have, so that people don't have to wait for years for an overpriced spot. We can and we will create public retirement and nursing home so that our seniors aren't at the mercy of gouging for-profit landlords. It's time that the government starts serving all the people. It's time to bring humanity back into our governance. It's time to create a city we can all be proud to call our home.
All right, thank you, Ivan. I'll repeat the question again for Tina and the audience's benefit. What's the biggest issue that you're hearing from constituents in the city, and what steps will you take to address this concern if you are elected? Up to 3 minutes, Tina, go ahead.
Thank you, Bill. Definitely housing is the biggest hurdle that we are facing. So I've come up with 10 strategies that we can implement. Number one, we have to determine residential, business, and industrial ownership in Kingston. And that means to figure out who owns what and how we can work with that. The second strategy is implementing rezoning and building rules. This increase would allow us to build by density. By changing the zoning codes, height, depending on location, bulk, and type of housing needed. The third strategy, zoning bylaws for Airbnbs. Currently, we have 500 short-term rentals in Kingston, which means if 2 people could live in each home, that's 1,000 people that we could be housing right now. So with those zoning bylaws, that would just mean we could make sure that we know exactly where they are and they're not affecting residential units. Fourth strategy is decreasing development charges for developers depending on the location and the developer themselves. Fifth would be capping development for foreign or out-of-town developers. Number 6, invest in city-owned public and student housing, and that would open up our residential homes that are currently being rented by students. 7, build tiny home communities. An example would be like Worthington Park on Weller Avenue. And we could build these for specific populations like seniors and young adults. The 8th one would be using existing infrastructure to build hybrid multi-use housing. This reduces the cost of labor, equipment, and materials that we would need to repurpose those. Number 9, open a municipal landlord tenant board office so we could deal with issues quickly. At this time, you have to wait 6 to 9 months to get a hearing. And number 10 would be to introduce rent-to-own programs for low-income and working class populations, because this would increase long-term housing options. And also, I was looking into economic recovery strategies and supply chain diversification, which I will touch on later. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tina. All right, let's open the floor to questions from our virtual audience. And a reminder, the new response time for the candidates for this round will be 90 seconds. So I'll look for hands up. I do see a question in the chat forum. So I'm going to start with Sam. This is a question for all of the candidates from Sam. Sam says, what are some ways that you would work to keep talent within Kingston when it comes to Queens, St. Lawrence College students, etc.? What are some strategies to keep the talent from leaving town when they graduate? I take it as the theme of that. So that's the question, candidates, and 90 seconds. Ivan, you go first.
People call me talented when they hear me playing violin. I don't believe in talent. It's not talent. It's the fact that I grew up in a country where music schools were free and where music education was complete. In Kingston right now, you pretty much have to be rich to get a music education because it's extremely expensive and unaffordable. That goes for art, that goes for everything. The city of Kingston, all levels of government, but we're here talking about the city of Kingston. The city of Kingston should open up music schools where people, where Kingstonians can get a music education. Kingstonians should go to Queens. There are very few Kingstonians in Queens. There are very few people especially from poorer areas of our town. They can't even dream of going to Queens. They have to work to pay rent to survive, to help their parents. That's what's going on. So, you know, we need to invest in Kingstonians and create talent in Kingston, and then the Kingstonians will stay here. Give them something to do, pay them, support arts, not support K-Rock Center to bring Brian Adams or something to pay, you know, hundreds of dollars for a ticket to see some big act from somewhere else. Give venues, give music schools, give art education to Kingstonians so they can thrive, and then support them when they become artists.
All right, thank you.
Pay them to be artists.
Yeah, thank you, Ivan. Talent, as you know, can mean a lot of things. It can mean arts, but it can also mean doctors, right? So
Yeah.
when students graduate from medical school and they leave town in a city that's very short right now of family physicians, I just throwing that out there as well. Okay, Tina, go ahead with your response to that, please.
Thank you, Bill. I think what we need to do is have a partnership. The city of Kingston needs to have a better partnership with Queens and St. Lawrence, so that any graduate from these programs and these schools, they have a 50% chance of getting hired. So if we, basically we have to look at it and say, well, if you're gonna hire someone from Queens or from St. Lawrence, 50% of the applicants need to be from Kingston or from these programs. And I'm not saying if they're from other countries, but if people are residing here and they graduate from these schools, then companies need to have at least 50% of their employee base from St. Lawrence and from Queens. I think that would be most effective. It's not discriminatory. It's allowing the talent to stay, because I've talked to lots of people who leave because they can't get an interview, or there's, nepotism going on, favoritism. So I think it's just reworking those policies to make sure that at least we have a chance to get an interview, and that 50% of staff is from those institutions. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Skyler, your turn.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think that talent does, like you said, Bill, mean a lot of different things. With regard to the doctor shortage, nursing shortage, I'm sure that's going to come up, so I'm not going to touch on that too much. But I think one of the things that we need to recognize is I was just recently, well, not that recently, but recently-ish, a student at Queens, and I faced the same decision where when I graduated, the economic viability, why would I pay this amount to live in Kingston if I could pay the same amount and live in Toronto, where there's more jobs available, more amenities, more of my friends live, yada, yada. Well, that's the thing that we need to focus on. We need to focus on promoting Kingston at all years of school, because it shouldn't just be something when they're graduating. Okay, now please stay in Kingston. It needs to be something that we need to be realistic about. We need to think about from all years, how can we get St. Lawrence students and Queen students and, well, I guess RMC, they kind of have their own schedule, but how can we build them into the community, make them feel like they are Kingstonians, and incentivize them to actually want to stay? So that is creating programs and investing in programs that support entrepreneurship. That is stuff like, for example, coming out of St. Lawrence is a lot of the trades that are needed to build houses, which we desperately need in Kingston. So it isn't just about providing them with work, it's about providing the city with desperately needed diversity and skills.
Okay, thank you. Lots of questions coming in the chat forum, so please keep them coming, and I promise I'll get to as many as I can. Our next question is from Aaron. It's to all of the candidates, and it speaks to the crime issue. There's a growing crime problem in the West End, Lakeside District in particular, and a lack of traffic enforcement. The West End feels forgotten in city funding and services. So how would you adjust services to ensure that all districts get equal service? Okay, thank you for that question, and we're going to start with Tina.
Hello, yes. For this issue, we are seeing a lot with development and all these issues. They're really focused on the downtown core. And I've talked to a couple business owners who feel that their West End businesses are being sacrificed in that, because we're not really paying attention. We're trying to diversify and build up downtown. But relating to crime, one of the biggest issues is our jail systems, because we have 6 jails here. So a lot of people are coming in from different cities, and when they're let out, I don't believe at this point we have any program in place that would escort that person back to their respective city, because when they come out, they have nowhere to go. We don't have any mental health and addictions programs in Kingston, any kind of recovery programs, detox programs for people coming out of the prison system. So in regards to the crime, I think we need to invest in more lighting, more cameras, because they do deter people. And it's not surveillance like in front of your home watching you do your business. It's basically just promoting community safety over personal preference, and investing more in cameras and lights and things, so that yeah, we can we can do that. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Tina.
Thanks.
Yep. Skyler, on the issue of rising crime and the need for traffic enforcement in the city's West End.
Yeah, thanks. So with respect to the West End, a lot of my family actually lives out in the West End of town. And I do know what you mean when you say that you feel sort of forgotten with a lot of the directions that the city takes. I've spoken to quite a few people. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get to every door in the West End, but I have spoken to a lot of people, and they have felt that the West End needs more traffic control, but also more amenities. In general, they feel like, from what I've heard, that there is a lack of sort of engagement with that West End of the city. So I think it's all part of a broader strategy. When it comes to enforcement with growing crime, that can take a lot of different approaches. If it's specifically theft, then yeah, more police presence might help, but also think of the nature. What is causing this theft? Is it that there's organized crime rings where you've got chop shops and that sort of thing? Or is it theft because people are barely scraping by and they can't make ends meet? Or is it theft because people are just bored? Like, that is a legitimate thing. So we need to inspect sort of what the nature of this is. And then as well, we need to address it in terms of, I think that the city needs stronger representation coming from the West End and the East End as we build out, so that it's a more unified approach instead of just downtown and then the periphery. I think that would help address the services out there en masse. It's not just particularly with regards to traffic enforcement and crime.
Okay, thank you, Skyler. Ivan, go ahead.
So I've been a taxi driver in this town, and I am currently a Kingston Transit bus driver, and I definitely know what you mean about the traffic congestion and traffic and road rage and all that. The current administration solution to that is to build more roads and to build more bridges. And in the long run, these are not even band-aid solutions. These actually encourage more traffic. What we need to do, and same with the crime. The crime is a result of poverty, result of desperation, result of people, not having, just losing it because there's too much pressure on them. So what we need to do is expand public transit, so we don't have to build bridges. We need to stop building suburbs like it's 1950s. It will destroy the planet, and it only adds to our stress and to our cost of living. We don't need any more pickup trucks and SUVs. We don't need people traveling. Anyway, expanded and free public transit will resolve the road rage problems and so on. And giving people food, giving people housing, giving people good municipal public jobs will reduce the stress, and will definitely reduce, not to mention the poor, the homeless people, housing them, giving them food, giving them medicine that they need. This will greatly reduce crime. Police doesn't reduce crime. Police and incarceration don't resolve crimes, just like the roads and bridges don't resolve traffic congestion.
Yep, thank you, Ivan. So we're gonna see some very broad citywide questions in this meeting, but also some very specific ones. And I have one of those right now for you candidates. This comes from Vivian, and Vivian says there is a proposal to permanently close Ontario Street in front of City Hall, as well as Market Street from Ontario Street to King Street. I think this is part of this pedestrian promenade that they've done on Princess Street a couple times a year. This question is to permanently close these two downtown streets, or a block of them anyway. Do you think this is a good idea? Okay, and we're going to start with Skyler on this. So this is Ontario Street in front of City Hall, Market Street from Ontario to King Street. Permanently close them to traffic. Is that a good idea, Skyler?
I don't know, Bill. In terms of whether it's a good idea, I think that's something that only time will tell. I'm all in favor of giving it a trial period. However, the thing is that is right now a fairly main artery, A, for tourists, and B, for people commuting to the east end of the city across the LaSalle Causeway. So I think that is something that definitely needs to be factored in, is how that will affect traffic flows for the rest of the city by closing that. I do agree with Ivan that public transit and the way that we currently do transit is not the future of how transit is going to be done. But living in the reality of now, cars are an unfortunate sort of, and I say that as someone who loves cars. I love cars, but cars are something that unfortunately is part of the modern transportation. So we need to think about how this proposal will affect traffic flows, because especially in a tourist district like that, we don't want people running away because they come to Kingston and say it's a congested mess. So I'd be happy to give it a trial period, see how it works for maybe a year, and then, or maybe even a season, a summer, and see how that works. And then based on findings from that, we could determine whether it's something that we could do now or push off into the future as something, a proposal for future, when public transit is stronger and when there's more effective other modes of transportation other than car. Because I think it's great to have more pedestrian space, but we do need to be realistic as well.
Okay, thank you. Ivan, what do you think about that?
I think it's a brilliant idea. I think that the unfortunate $180 million bridge that could have housed everybody 100 times over, now that it's built, does basically resolve the issue of the causeway getting blocked. So we don't have to worry about that. Of course, King and Princess should be blocked off from car traffic and available for as a beautiful promenade, like when the promenade is turned on. Not for tourists. For tourists, sure, but also for Kingstonians. I think it's very important that we don't obsess over the tourists having a great experience in here. That's fine. But like, I think it's more important that we make sure that Kingstonians from the north end, from the west end, can come into the city, you know, on frequent electric, you know, wonderful buses, and get off at the hub and promenade down the road. Or maybe another thing that a long time ago I saw pictures. Kingston had the little streetcar running down and up Princess in Ontario. So a really slow moving, gentle streetcar, I think, would be really nice to see. So yeah, wonderful idea. I think it can be done. You know, there could be like hours when you know, whatever delivery trucks can come in or whatever at night, stuff like that. We can work it. Cities have done this. Europe is like that. This is an idea should have been, you know, a long time ago carried out.
Thank you, Ivan. Tina?
Thank you, Bill. I haven't heard of this proposal, and I'm not quite sure of the reason behind closing those streets off permanently. I understand that it's, you know, that one section is, it's right in front of City Hall, you know, but I don't think closing it permanently would have any benefit, not for traffic purposes, but just in the sense of being able to keep people moving around. Like if it was closed to big trucks and to delivery trucks, I could see that. But I'm interested in introducing a lot of micro mobility options, and so we could keep it open for that. I think having people having the ability to be self-autonomous, and they're able to use little modes of transportation to get around, that's going to help recover our economy, because they'll be out spending money. And so I'm not very clear as to the reason why it needs to be closed, or what the proposal is. So I'm not against it or for it at this time, but I think it might be a bit of an issue for the people that live downtown, and for the businesses to be able to have that open to different modes of transportation.
Okay, thanks, Tina. All right, let's move on to our next question then. This again is in the chat forum. This is from Louise. This is about affordability again and the housing issue. So candidates, you'll have another chance to expand on your earlier points. Louise says, I moved here in 2018. The rents have increased by an average of 17% each year since I moved here. How would you stop the major property owners from increasing rents this much every time a lease ends? Because they know people are looking and they're desperate to find housing. This is a huge part of the problem. So Ivan, go ahead.
We have to get tough on landlords. This is unfortunately a provincial matter. So provincial government is setting the rules of rent control. And right now, they've set the rules to favor the landlords and developers. What we can do is, first of all, we can build rent geared to income public housing, which will be outside of this system, and which will set the rental prices at the prices that people can afford, namely 30% of their income. That's the main way to deal with this, with municipal government power. But we can also get tough on landlords. We can make sure that they're behaving. We can make sure that instead of opening the doors wide open for them to do whatever the hell they want, which is what they're doing now under the current administration of Brian Patterson, we can severely restrict what they can and cannot do. We can force them to deal with maintenance issues. We can force them to deal with pest infestations, and we can start having a relationship with them, so that when they come to us and say, I want to build something, we can say, are you the guy that kicked out so many tenants and raised the rents this much? No thanks, go somewhere else. Or B, are you the guy who maintained his buildings, who cleaned up the bugs, and who didn't raise rents on people and didn't evict people? In that case, let's make a deal. So, things can be done, but most importantly, rent geared to income public housing, instead of building bridges, instead of throwing money at for-profit landlords.
Right. Thank you, Ivan. Tina, on the issue of making rents affordable locally.
Thank you. Yes, as I touched on earlier, I think it's very important that municipally we change the laws around that we're not getting the provincial and federal rules applied to our municipalities. We have to have a stronger policies around that. And having a local landlord tenant board office also will help us to deal with these policies in our city. Because not every city is the same, not all the rents are the same. Again, it's basically gentrification. So if you walk around the neighborhood, you'll see like Colburn Street, for example. Just my grandma lived there 30 years ago. So we've got these wonderful little neighborhoods that people have lived in for so long. And then developers come in, and on Colburn Street, there's this random, it's a beautiful development, but you see all the trees are gone. And so those landlords are like, okay, we're going to charge $1,800. And then all the other landlords are like, oh, well, if they're charging that, then we're going to charge that. So again, I don't think municipally we have any rules in place that they can do that we have to cap the prices on rent. So definitely municipally, we have to change the policy. That's the only way we're going to be able to make any of these decisions.
Okay, thank you. Skyler?
Bill, could you please repeat the question? Sorry, it's been a while.
Sure. Well, the prelude to the question is from Louise. I moved here in 2018. Rents have increased by an average of 17% each year since I moved here. How would you stop the major property owners from increasing rent this much every time a lease ends? Because they know people looking are desperate to find housing. So this is a huge part of the problem.
Big time. And thanks for repeating that. So it's a few things. Firstly, I do think that we do need to be tougher on landlords that are not adhering to the Property Standards Act. That's a bare minimum in terms of the quality of the property. And I think through bolstering and strengthening our public service in Kingston, I think that we can make it so that we have more capacity to handle the volume of calls and requests that come in. Because right now, from what I'm hearing, the amount that comes in, the reason why landlords are able to get away with so much is because the city is just inundated with requests and they don't have the capacity to help and solve this. As well, I do think examining the bylaws to increase the negotiating power that the municipality has, I think is a great strategy, because we don't want our citizens that we as a government are being elected to protect and support. We don't want to be at the whim of whoever's got the most money. That is not the appropriate way of doing governance. So I agree that we do need to get stricter and tougher on this sort of legislation, but as mentioned previously, this is not something that entirely falls under the municipal jurisdiction. So that's something that in my previous proposal, where I mentioned that we need to work interregionally with other municipalities and cities, that's something that we can negotiate together and levy up towards higher levels of government as well. So there's a few things. More supply also helps as well, but it's not the only solution.
Okay, thanks, Skyler. On to our next question now. This is from Maggie. How do the candidates plan to make Kingston a more environmentally friendly city? This might be in regards to new construction, transit, how businesses are regulated, banning single-use plastics, etc. Tina, go ahead.
Sorry, Bill, could you repeat that?
How do the candidates plan to make Kingston a more environmentally friendly city? With a few examples thrown in here from Maggie. This might be in regards to new construction, public transit, how businesses are regulated, banning single-use plastics, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Yeah, so one of my top 3 priorities is creating an urban forest in Kingston. So that basically means we have to enforce new rules and policies around how many trees can be cut down when we have development. And aligned with that, we would have to replant. We have to have a replanting policy. So we could like as soon as like on Sir John A there, that whole street, we could be planting trees and shrubbery along there. There's a lot of areas like Montreal and the Vision coming in like 45 years later, and you just see concrete and metal. So I think the replanting is very important, having a certain amount that needs to be replanted, and protection of our wetlands, our rivers and our lakes, and making sure that no provincial MZOs or anything can come in and change those laws. And especially with single-use plastics, that's a big one for me. It's very simple policy change for that, and working with all the businesses and having people, you know, people have to be more self-responsible. So when you go to McDonald's, if you don't get a napkin, if you don't get a fork, that's just going to be the reality.
Okay.
But yeah, so all on a policy level change. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Skyler.
Great. So yeah, a few things. One, with regard to development, making the city more green. Development is something that's clearly an issue to help solve with the housing crisis. So we need to first look at development and developing sustainably. So with that, we've got things like making sure that the buildings that we're building are green buildings. So those tend to have, there's a operational definition for what that is as well. So they have less negative impact on the environment than standard buildings because their construction minimizes on-site grading. It saves natural resources by using alternative building materials and recycles construction waste rather than sending truck after truck to landfills. So the other thing is the interior spaces need to be like, we have a lot of older buildings in Kingston. So retrofitting is definitely part of it. But for any new builds, we need to make sure that they adhere to the green building standards within terms of interior spaces having proper natural lighting to minimize use of artificial lighting and outdoor views. Highly efficient HVAC systems. We have a lot of HVAC companies in Kingston that are specialized with this. We can make sure that they're utilized properly. And the other thing is when we're doing painting, just small things like that, making sure that we're using low VOC paints, which is the volatile organic compounds in paint, flooring, furniture, to make sure that we have good air quality, because that's also part of it. We need to also look from a business standpoint. The Chamber of Commerce has a collective of a lot of the businesses in Kingston. That's something that they could docket as, okay, how can we, for let's say restaurant businesses in Kingston, looking at best practices of suppliers that have maybe sugarcane straws. I know paper straws are kind of brutal, but sugarcane straws are a great alternative. Stuff like that, simple things, but it has to be across the board.
Ivan, what is your plan to make Kingston a more environmentally friendly city?
I agree with building green. The problem with building green is that the current administration has hired all the landlords and developers representatives, and they are now in charge of our city policies. And what they are doing is letting their friends build at will wherever they want and however they want. So they're building suburbs and bridges and expanding roads and acting like it's 1950s, like we're not in a climate emergency globally. There was a climate emergency protest in Kingston at the beginning of our campaigns, and we were all invited to pledge to commit to the reduction of greenhouse gases in Kingston by 50% by 2030, and I was the only mayoral candidate who showed up and made that pledge. Public transit is the most important way to do this. Public transit will reduce the roads, will reduce the amount of gas emissions, and so green building, everything that Tyler said is true, but it is going to take someone like me who is actually going to talk back to the landlords to be able to make that happen. And public transit, we have to expand it drastically. Police budget is $46 million. Public transit budget is $17 million. Those numbers should be reversed. Buses should be running free every 5 minutes everywhere you need to go, and they will save us. They will save us big time.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank Maggie for that question as well. Let's move on to our next question. This is from Kelly to all of the candidates. Should you not be successful in your bid to become mayor, how will you continue to contribute your thoughts and plans toward making Kingston better for all? Skyler, you're on deck.
All right. Just want to clear up one thing from the last question. I was actually working during that debate, during that climate action protest, but I have actually been endorsed by the Ontario Climate Emergency Campaign. Tina also has been. So we both are also interested and do care a lot about the environment. I just wanted to clarify that before starting. If not successful, that is something that I've thought about, because of course, when you're making a decision to run like this, you have to think of both sides of the coin. If I'm successful, if I'm not. If I'm not successful, now that I've got my feet wet in this sort of environment, I know a lot more about the players, the relevant players, the people who should be having their voices heard, who haven't had their voices heard. And I believe that I represent a very, how will I put this? A group of people who feel disengaged from the community. So I know what their desires are and what they want to see out of the city. And going door to door, and by having that opportunity to have a reason to knock on people's doors, and I'm not just that weird guy knocking on someone's door, that has given me the opportunity and the knowledge to be equipped so that in 4 years I can run again. And also in that meantime, I can serve on any board that makes itself available. I'm going to be attending council meetings. I'm going to be getting involved with volunteer groups, because now that I have so much more perspective, I understand so much more what it takes to get things done and where specifically the squeaky wheel does get the grease. Because unfortunately, it's a system, and it's a system that you have to know to be able to unravel. And that's something that I'm looking to do in the next 4 years, to get people engaged and to make sure that for next election, there's more than one debate like this, and that there's more engagement across the board.
Thank you. Ivan.
I'm going to continue what I've been doing for 20 years in Kingston. I'm a general secretary of Cataraqua Union of Tenants, which is an organization that helps tenants and homeless people and organizes them. And it's an organization that knows what's going on, that watches City Hall, that has many members. I've been giving delegations to the city council meetings. I've begged them every time they've thrown millions at developers and landlords not to do it. I've showed them what they can do with the money, what they can do better. I've fought for shelters, for safe injection sites. I have organized a food program. We've been feeding homeless people every day last winter. We've been cooking soup and sandwiches. I've been making those soup and sandwiches myself often. This is what I do. I am not, someone who wants to be a politician. I'm not someone who decided that I want to be a mayor out of the blue. This is a part of what I do. Being these 2 months of this campaign is me studying government, knowing government, demanding rights, human rights, basic human rights for oppressed people in Kingston, for the homeless and for the tenants. And that's Cataract Union Tenants. Look it up on Facebook, look it up, tenantsunite.ca.
Okay.
That's what I do.
Thank you. Tina.
Thank you. If I'm not successful in this election, I'm still going to be lobbying my smart city technology because I feel if our internal system is not accountable, then we're never going to get anywhere. So regardless if I win or not, I'm going provincial. I'm going to run for federal. That was my plan before I started to run for Kingston, because there needs to be change internally. And those systems are from 1999. So bureaucracy is going out the window, and we need to focus on the internal, getting everything up to speed so that we can see exactly where the money is and we can reallocate money. So yeah, I am just going to be lobbying, talking to local groups as I've been doing. Same with Ivan, same with Skyler. We want change. We're all running for the same purpose and reason. So my platform is just a bit more focused on the internal aspect, so that the external would be so much easier to implement all these changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to our next question. This is from Joanne to all of the candidates. Joanne says, recently there was a situation in Kingston where one of the city administrators challenged the level of understanding of council. How would you personally deal with an administrator who felt disrespectful or disrespected by council, if that situation were to arise? Okay. That's how I'm interpreting the question. Ivan, go ahead.
It is not Paige Agnew's business to tell council what to do. She's supposed to follow the instructions of the council, and same goes for Lainey Hurdle. When the council directed Lainey Hurdle to go away and find out how to save lives, how to put City of Kingston's policy in tune with the United Nations policy, which states that no one should be homeless, that it's a human right to have a house. You know what she did? She came back with a report of how to persecute people, how to chase them around, how to push them further into the woods. It's called encampment protocol. Right now, a human being in Kingston does not have the right to pitch a tent and live in it at minus 25 during the winter in this city, because Lainey Hurdle came back with her own interpretation of what it means, what council directed her to do. In other words, the opposite of what the council directed her to do. City staff's job is to follow the instructions of the city council, which are democratically elected by Kingstonians. They haven't been doing that. That's a shame.
Okay. Ivan, I know you're passionate about this, but I do want to keep this on a very respectful tone. These people you're talking about don't have a chance to respond to what you just said. Okay, so please keep that in mind. And so if you're going to throw names out there, just be aware that they don't have a chance right now to respond to some of these allegations. Okay, I'm just saying that on their behalf, Ivan. I don't want a response from you. You already gave it. So I'll move on to Tina now.
I think that questioning applications, development processes, and things like that that's a safe space to do that. But I don't think disrespecting someone or saying, like bringing our personal politics into these meetings and into people's decisions, I think that's a big part of the changes that are going to be happening. Is we're going to have to open up these conversations, and we're going to have to allow the public to comment and to be engaged in the meetings, so that we can people are, need to have their voice heard. And I don't think that everyone is in alignment with everything. So I think there's just a lot of angst around it right now. So I think we have to be very careful as to how we're addressing our council and our mayor, because we have voted these people in to speak on our behalf. But we have to open that conversation up to the public through our meetings online there. You see the comments are closed. So again, this is just that moving forward and opening up accountability, transparency, and holding people accountable.
Okay, thank you. Skyler?
Yep. Okay. So yeah, the thing here is that it's the city staff's role to help support with decision making and help weighing the pros and the cons, like for example with this with regard to a development application. But I can understand, as a worker, you've put work into a proposal or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, you're not the one that's making the decision. It's the people who have been elected. They're the ones that are meant to represent the city. And if the city's not happy with the decision that those who are elected have made, then that's where the onus falls. It shouldn't fall on the city workers. So that's the pro and the con of being an elected representative. If you don't get the decision right and it isn't representative of what the city wants, we can and should be held accountable for it. But I understand on a personal level, if a city worker does not agree with the decision, being frustrated, but I don't think it's the proper venue to go sort of vent publicly about it. Now, I don't know the behind the scenes reasoning, but all that I'm going to say on that is just, it should be something that is handled by the council, and questioning their sort of capability is in turn sort of questioning the population's credibility, because the population has elected this person. But through this next tenure, I'm hoping to open things up more so that more people can and will have the ability to weigh in on council decisions, and council can be more open and accessible for people.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to our next question now. This is from Michelle. It has to do with tourism. As you know, it represents a big chunk of the Kingston economy. Should the city spending on tourism increase, decrease, or stay the same, and why? We'll start with Tina on that one.
Thank you. I think at this point, it's because we have winter coming up that we really need to focus on local tourism, investing in events that local people can come to and afford, and reconnect our community through that. So some other ways that we can do that for people that are disabled or have disabilities that maybe they can't walk down to the venue, we can introduce augmented reality digital tourism. And again, that's a very inexpensive way to involve all the communities in. It's very cost effective. And yeah, so I think investing in our local tourism is where we need to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Skyler, on the issue of should city taxes on tourism increase, decrease, or stay the same, and why?
City taxes on tourism. I believe that we need to do sort of a broad scale analysis as to what we bring relative to other tourist destinations, because we have to maintain being a tourist destination that makes sense financially. I know that with upcoming financial hardships, with the way the economy is going right now, all the indicators are pointing towards a recession. The duration and severity of that is up in question, but it is incoming. So we need to think about, we need to make things affordable for people so that they can still come, and we need to be agile and able to react quickly to new circumstances. So in terms of whether they should stay the same, change for the higher or lower, I think that would depend on market conditions. I think it should be something that's dynamic, because we need to make it an economically viable choice. However, Tina did bring up some great points that it's not just about tourism from outside, but also locals. I think that having acts coming in like Brian Adams is great because it gives people in the community an opportunity to gather together and share in Kingston. And that gives opportunities for local vendors to attend and get their name out there as well, shared under the banner of a big name coming to town. So we need to increase sort of the amenities that we also have to continue supporting the 10% of all Kingston workers who work in an industry associated with tourism. So yeah, it's something that we need to do a solid analysis on before I make a comment as to higher or lower. But I do think it should be something that we can be agile and responsive on.
Okay, thank you. Ivan?
There are 500 people going to freeze to death this winter. There's 500 people at a great risk of dying in Kingston this winter. So, you know, tourism, beautification, heritage, economic promotion of businesses, police, all these things need to be put on back burner immediately so that people are not freezing to death in the winter. Tourism in general is not, it's a volatile business, as Skyler mentioned. It's unreliable, and if you think about it, it's not the best way to build an economy. You know, I think the city should invest in it. City should be in the profit-making business. The city should make money. The city should, you know, not give all the opportunities for wealth creation to the businesses. So if we're going to do tourism, let's do the kind of tourism where tourists are actually contributing to our city, and we are taking those tourist dollars and investing them into our people, into food for our people, into housing for our people, and so on. So that's basically what I think. I could go on. I mean, there's a little matter of our heritage not being that impressive, and but yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for the candidates now. I'll go back to the audience in a second, but I want to ask this one. What do you see as the top issue or issues facing local businesses? And how would you tackle them if elected as mayor? So top issue or issues facing local businesses right now. We'll start with Skyler on this one.
Yeah, so I would say it's an issue that's going to be coming as well. It's not necessarily one that's here right now, but it's something that we need to be planning ahead of. And that's something that I'm big on, is proactive planning rather than just reactive. So we all know that from basic economic principles with economies of scale, which just means the more of something you produce, generally you can produce it for a cheaper price. So as we enter into a time of financial hardship on broad scale, we need to keep in mind that these businesses don't have the price undercutting power that larger scale multinational businesses would have, such as Walmart or Costco or Loblaws. We need to keep in mind that these businesses are going to be in a very difficult fight for their survival. So we need to understand and listen to the needs that they have. And I'm not saying that businesses, it's purely a trickle down sort of economy, because I don't believe in that. I don't believe that if you support businesses, all of people's rights will be solved automatically. That's not what I'm implying, but I am saying that there's a balance that needs to be struck. So we need to look after the business owners in Kingston, because that's a big risk. To open a business is a huge risk. So we need to promote them, which we are doing, but we need to continue doing that. We need to listen to them so that as this situation evolves, that in this sort of macro scale economy, that they're being heard and we're supporting them in ways that need to be supported, because they provide jobs for people and they provide resources for when tourists are coming or locals. I know a lot of my favorite shopping experiences have been downtown Kingston. And I think that those people deserve the support of the government, just like the people do. It's not an either or, it can be both.
Okay, thank you. Ivan, what do you see as the top issue or issues facing local businesses right now, and how would you tackle them if you're elected mayor?
Big businesses have no issues. Homestead, which is the fourth largest real estate investment trust in Canada, it has no problems. They're making a killing. They don't know what to. They have so much money. that the Smith family has so much money and is making so much money by inflating rents, by creating
Okay, local businesses then.
local businesses. The problem, the issues for local business, for small businesses, is that the people have no money, so their customers are on the street starving. Their customers are giving all their money to Brett Smith in rent, and then they have no money to spend in small businesses. So that's the problem. We need to encourage, we need to give money, we need to give jobs, we need to create we need to create homes, we need to feed the people, we need to I mean, people can't get around, people can't buy cars, people can't buy pay for gas. The gas is skyrocketing, everything's, the cost of living is crazy. People have no money to spend, and that affects small businesses, not the big businesses. They're doing amazingly. Small businesses, together with the rest of us, are facing this cost of living crisis, which we have to get out of.
Okay, thank you. So Tina, on the issue of the big issue facing local businesses right now, keep in mind a lot of them still recovering from the pandemic. So what are the issues, and how would you tackle them if elected?
In speaking with a lot of some of the business owners downtown, one of the biggest issues is the unhoused or the homeless population. Because there is no support for them, they're just kind of wandering around downtown, and it's causing a bit of, it's scaring people away, making people uncomfortable. But again, that's, it's not the business's responsibility, but that is a big reason why a lot of the businesses downtown feel that they're suffering. And I think a big part of it too is we have to introduce more multicultural marketing and getting more of our communities out to support these businesses instead of going to the big box stores. So ways we could do that as well is having intentional friction and gamification, like getting people out, supporting businesses to have contests, have games, have a 2-for-1 night. So really just providing a lot more reasons for people to come down and shop or to eat. And there's also, I know there's some funds and grants available for businesses. I'm not sure in our city of Kingston what those are at this point, but I really think engaging the community through marketing and multicultural means, and having people come out and spend their money and getting something kind of from that.
Thank you. I'm going to ask another question of the candidates now from my list. So question, homecoming, St. Patrick's Day, first week of university. We know large street parties have been a problem in the past, yet despite the best efforts of councils currently and in the past, and police and other agencies, these unsanctioned street parties continue. Do you have any new ideas to put a lid on these parties, which cost taxpayers a lot of money and of course puts safety at risk? Ivan, go ahead.
Young people are going to party, and that's nice, but the way they've been partying in Kingston, especially during homecoming, has been nothing short of shocking, outrageous, and dangerous. That is what police should be for. Instead of persecuting poor people day in and day out, instead of busting drug dealers who are really drug users and drug the most oppressed and vulnerable and suffering of our citizens, they should be making sure that no one gets raped during these outrageous parties. So my solution, if there's, I'm not a great proponent of police activity, action, and so on, mainly because their main priority has been to terrorize the poor. But I think that that's what they should be for. I think that we need to plan ahead for this kind of stuff. I think we need to enforce law. If you're not allowed to throw a party, then you shouldn't be able to throw a party. So it's as simple as that. The new part here would be to actually carry out the orders that they have.
Okay, thank you. Tina, do you have any new ideas to put a lid on the unsanctioned street parties that cost taxpayers a lot of money and put safety at risk?
Yes, actually, I have a great solution for this. I feel that Queens should be throwing an amazing party, an amazing homecoming for their students. And if you look at Queens property, there are many venues that and lots of land where all we need to do is push the party into Queens area. So that way the residents and everything on the streets don't have to leave their homes in fear. And the other night I was driving and at midnight doing my job, I got a beer can kicked in my windshield. So I think that Queens needs to step up and give these kids a proper homecoming party on their property. That will lessen, and we can get, they'll have their own security, we could have the police there, but then it would be contained. And the mess would be contained, it would be easy to clean up. They could have champagne, they could have contests, you know, there's lots of buildings where they could actually have an amazing homecoming. And I think the tradition is wonderful, but it's like Ivan said, it's pretty disheartening to see these kids just flopping around on the street with no care. And so I think really we have to work with Queens and push the party out of the residential area into the Queens area.
Okay, thank you, Skyler.
Thanks. Yeah, big issue, and definitely something as a former Queen's student, I'm intimately aware of sort of the goings on there. And to be honest, a lot of people are very respectful during that period, but there are some bad actors who definitely spoil the party for everyone else. One of the things that I want to mention is that I'm actually going to be meeting with the Queen's Director of Safety and Emergency Services about this particular issue, because it's been a contentious issue that has been going on for years. This is not new. So I think there's case studies from out in the broader world that show that large scale partying like this can be done in a safe and in a manner that doesn't cost the taxpayers of Kingston a bunch of money. For example, in our own country, the Calgary Stampede, enormous party, way bigger than Queen's Homecoming and way less destructive. One of the solutions that they implement is that they don't bury their heads in the sand and say, oh, you know, we're not sanctioning these parties, so therefore we don't want any culpability. What they do is they recognize, yeah, people are going to be rambunctious, they're going to drink, there is going to be this sort of behavior, so let's centralize it. And I think Tina has a great idea. One of the things that I was proposing was the field space that they have at Queen's. They could operate like what they have at the Calgary Stampede. It's called a beer tent or a beer garden. It's a giant tent that could be paid for at Queen's. And that way we can extremely minimize the amount of Kingston police presence there. They could bolster their own security services. And then in addition, we need to factor in the hospitalizations, because that's something that is not part of the enforcement, but they need to also be responsible for not overloading our emergency services that as Kingstonians we're paying for, and the Queen students are also paying for it through their rentals as well. So it's just putting, sorry, I realize I'm over time, sorry.
You had me at the giant beer tent over City Park or something like that. I know what you're trying to say. I have to just put the meeting on hold for a second. We're getting a lot of comments in the chat about why Brian Patterson is not involved in this all candidates meeting. He was in fact invited several times by the coalition to participate in this meeting. This is for the benefit of the audience, and he has declined. So I can leave it to Mr. Patterson to outline the reasons why, but he was invited several times and has declined to attend. All right, that's all I'm going to say about it right now. I'm not seeing any. I'm seeing a lot of chats and comments, but no questions. So if you want to send me some direct questions, I'll be happy to ask them. And in the meantime, I have another one for you here. Do you favor so-called strong mayor powers in Kingston? And if it does come here, as has been alluded to by Premier Ford, how do you plan to keep city issues at the forefront of the entire council agenda? In other words, are you in favor or against strong mayor powers? Tina, we'll start with you on that one.
I'm definitely in favor of it. I actually did a little research on that, trying to find out exactly where our system is standing on that. But I think we really need to have leadership and direction, and that should fall onto the mayor. And the council members are representing the districts, and they come to bring all those issues, and then we all sit and talk about it. So I think having a strong mayoral presence, system is going to be the most effective, because if we make a decision and there's a fallout from it, it would fall onto the mayor. And there's that accountability piece. So instead of spreading out the decision making, having meetings and lots of different ideals around what should be done, what shouldn't, I think the mayor should have the most say in those things, and also the most accountability. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Skyler?
Yeah, in terms of the strong mayor powers, I have mixed feelings. I do think that there is some credibility in that the mayor is the only serving member on council who's been elected by the entire city. The specific district councilors are obviously elected, but only by their districts. So I think that there is some validity there. And was there a second part of that question, or was it just about the strong mayor powers?
Well, yeah, do you favor so-called strong mayor powers in Kingston? If it does come here, how do you plan to keep city issues at the forefront of the entire council agenda and not just the mayor's agenda?
Gotcha. Yeah, totally understandable. Yeah, so with regards to that, we've got, like I said, I've got mixed opinions, and that's something that I would ask the city at large. That's something that I want consultation on. And I'd also be looking into, is it something that's revocable? Is it something that we can take those powers and then revoke them? Because I think that it's like I said, very positive, because the mayor is the only one that's elected at large. However, I also don't like the idea of sort of like a dictatorial mayor. I don't think that's proper. And I don't think that that's the way that council is meant to be run. It's meant to be a group of equals. However, like I said, the mayor is the only one who's elected by everyone. So I would take that to the city at large, ask them, do you favor this or not favor this? Get some public consultation and then see what they say. But as of now, it's not the reality. So I would be happy to operate under the current more collaborative methods, because yeah, the city's needs do need to come first. District specific stuff is definitely relevant because it's part of the whole city, but we need to keep that large scale stuff rolling as well.
Thank you. Ivan?
It's a moot point because it really does not apply to us right now. So I certainly would not want to, for these powers, extra powers, to be introduced halfway through somebody's term or after they were elected. So I think as long as the electorate, the population voting knows what's at stake, in other words, then you know, it's okay or not, that would be okay. You know, if people went to the polls knowing that the powers that the mayor has are greater than they used to be, then that would be okay, I guess. Right now, we don't have a perfect system. It's you know, right now the councillors are not actually representing their wards as much as they are making decisions on the matters that matter to entire city. In other words, we don't get to ask you know, a Kingstown councillor what happens with the tannery, even though it's in their ward. I think that might be something that we might want to look into. Mayors do have powers. Another concern of mine is that the city bureaucracy, the you know, city staff seem to have an exorbitant amount of power.
Okay, you're out of time on that point. Okay, so let's move on to our next question, and this is again in the chat room here. How do the candidates plan to address reconciliation with Indigenous people? We'll start with Skyler.
Yeah, so reconciliation, it's definitely not something that we should be only focusing on September 30th, on Truth and Reconciliation Day. This is something that we need to be actively taking part in day in and day out. And it's something that I know personally, I'm not an expert on this. I've attended trainings, I've attended events for Truth and Reconciliation. I've actually even co-led talks, like on this past one for my work. I was helping with an Indigenous person. Actually, we were going through a presentation about the public service and the interaction between the Indigenous population. And it's something that we also need to recognize, that government has a very troubled history when it comes to the Indigenous population. So I believe that constant engagement is definitely an element. I think that it's something that we could look into expanding in terms of the council. Why wouldn't we have an Indigenous representation in the council sitting there every week? And they don't need to necessarily be there in person, because if they want to stay on their lands and outside of the city, they shouldn't have to commute to Kingston. So it's something about reducing the barriers and also making sure that that Indigenous voice is heard. The other thing is we do have to recognize that Kingston is on Indigenous territory. For example, with Bell Park, there's that Bell Park Island has a lot of Indigenous history. So I think it's part of an ongoing journey. I think that with Truth and Reconciliation, a big part of it is listening and learning. So I personally am going to continue listening and learning, and continuing to promote that others do the same thing, and making sure that Indigenous voices and perspectives are heard.
Okay, thank you. Ivan?
As it stands, truth and reconciliation is an empty phrase. The government officials read out the land acknowledgement and then just go stomp over it. The reason we need truth and reconciliation is because there was a genocide. There is a genocide going on against Indigenous people in our town, in our country. Indigenous people are way overrepresented on the streets, way overrepresented in jails. They are oppressed as we speak right now, and they're dying as we speak, because white supremacist way of being has been imposed on them. Now, Lord Amherst, for example, has written to the colonial, Lord Amherst has asked for smallpox infected blankets to be distributed among Native people. That's a fact. That's a historical fact. I'm a historian. Many streets will change names of streets, but that will not do it. We need to feed the people, we need to house the people, and we need to respect the fact that Indigenous people are the protectors of this land, are the protectors of this water. And they've been fighting this colonial genocide from day one. We need to support them, we need to listen to them, and I am an ally of many strong, powerful, beautiful water and land protectors. This global crisis, environmental crisis, would not have happened. Nobody would be home. Nobody was homeless before white supremacists came here and took over. We need to listen.
Thank you. Thank you. Tina?
Yes, so 2 ways that I would work on truth and reconciliation is, number one, implementing a duty to consult policy. So any environmental, infrastructure, any planning, we would have the duty to consult our Indigenous folks on that. And the second, sorry. So secondly, I would like to see Bell Park become a Indigenous reconciliation infrastructure. So that means that that whole park and the island would be essentially given back to the Indigenous folk, and they could construct and have basically have their spiritual rights and their right to practice their cultural norms on that property. So people coming from other cities, people coming out of the prison system would have a place to go for rehabilitation purposes and to re-examine their cultural identity, because we only have the one Indigenous cultural center there, and it's so close, it would be a perfect place for them to be able to reinstate their cultural practices privately. And yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Okay, thank you. So we have a question here from Parker on the housing issue again, related to housing. Parker asks, can we not tax rental properties, especially short-term at the municipal level, to make housing in Kingston less attractive to real estate investors, increasing the supply of non-rentals? I know some of you have tackled this already, and you can take another crack at it here. Ivan, go ahead.
It's tricky. See, the taxation system is written. the tax law is written by big landlords and developers and big businesses. So there's a bit of a trap insofar as it is impossible to tax big corporations or big exploiters or bad businesses more than regular people. So the taxes, municipal taxes, come from property taxes. In other words, it is not really possible to tax rental properties more than residential properties, but there are ways of getting around this. So one of the ways of dealing with Airbnb is simply to ban it. Airbnb thrives on less than minimum wage, no contract kind of labor. Airbnb, is unregulated. It's the gig economy. Same with Uber. Same with DoorDash. These are industries that are running the workers and the people using them into the ground. So I would kind of avoid that whole issue of taxing short-term rentals and so on by simply not allowing them.
Okay, thank you. Tina?
I believe, Airbnb can exist quite nicely. It's great for tourism, for downtown. Like I said, I think it would be best to implement a zoning bylaw, so only certain places could be an Airbnb, because there are some out in the East End here. And again, it's quite far from the city center, and it's just that's a full home that people could be using. So I think it's really we have to work with the landlords and the owners and just create zoning orders around it. That way we know exactly where the Airbnbs are, and they'll be taxed as I'm not sure if they're taxed right now as a property or as a business. But I don't think that we really need to ban it. I think it is a positive thing. It's just where we have those Airbnbs and that they're not taking away from our residents.
Okay, thank you. Skyler?
Yeah, with regard to taxing Airbnbs, I think Ivan made a great point. There's certain things that, although ideal, are sort of out of municipal purview. Once again, this is something, like I said, I think one of the best solutions for fixing the housing affordability crisis is going just outside of Kingston, looking regionally, interregionally, and creating communities of practice. And through that, we can negotiate better with higher levels of government. If we decide that as a collective, the best approach is to impose more fees and further restrictions on Airbnb and similar sites, because you can't just do Airbnb, right? There's other alternatives that are similar. If we want to pursue that legislative option, then I think that's where we would use our coalition, our strength banded together, instead of coming as a bunch of discrete individual municipalities, because I think alone we're weaker. It's similar to a union structure, right? If you're organized and you fight for the same sort of cause, I think you're more likely to get your voice heard. So I think that would be sort of the style that I would take, because we can't municipally just change that. Banning Airbnb, I would need to see a cost benefit analysis on that. I'm not sure that that would be the wisest option. I'd be happy to have my mind changed on that, but my intuition says that that's probably going to be a net negative. But I am happy to learn more about that.
Great, thank you. This next question is from Sam, asking, how are you going to make municipal government more modern and accessible for everyone? Tina?
Yay, I've been waiting for this question. So like I said, internally, our system is still from 1999. And if you read the report from the KPMG group, the problem with the system is that we can't keep track of salaries and benefits. So we're overlapping in things. So to make it more modern and up to date, we would introduce smart city technology. And smart city technology is basically a digital infrastructure that would allow the systems to filter through all of that. And generally speaking, the cost to build automation systems like this are anywhere from $2.50 to $7.50 per square foot. So it's a very inexpensive way to modernize our internal system. And that's depending on our structure. So we have lots of empty buildings and stuff that we could implement this data infrastructure in, and it wouldn't cost us any extra. So I think that's the way to go, Bill.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Skyler?
Love the enthusiasm on that one. Yeah, so in terms of making it more modern and accessible for people, I think that this is going to be impossible to answer in 90 seconds. But one of the things that we can do is be more transparent. So that means on the city site, it should be very easy to access things like a city plan. The official plan is over 500 pages. Let's boil that down and make it very accessible for people. A ton of the people that I've spoken to didn't even know that there was an election happening, which is very concerning for a democracy. If a lot of your voting population didn't know. And yeah, you might say, you know, these people might be disengaged or whatever, but that is not just their responsibility to be informed. Of course, that people should be seeking this information, but we need to face the reality. So we need to make things more accessible, easy to access. One of the simple things that could be implemented, I just last week came from a global government leaders forum, and I have no clue how I was invited to this, but there was global leaders from across the world with best practices in government digitization and modernization. And this was a wealth of knowledge. There is so much knowledge out there as to how you can make things better for people, best practices from across the world. And I think that we could implement that so easily. There's free programs to upskill city workers in digital literacy and overall modern technologies. So I think that those are opportunities that we can leverage to, for example, like city solutions. People don't always know what the big complaints are and the solutions that are being done. We can have a dashboard that shows the problems that people have, link our solution directly to it, and even show a financial allocation. That's something that's very easy to do and something that we should be doing. Anyway, sorry, overtime again, my bad.
Yeah,
I did say 90 seconds.
You're always pushing the boundaries of this time here.
I'm sorry, I told you 90 seconds.
You know, some of these are complex questions. I get it, but you have 90 seconds. Ivan, how are you going to make municipal government more modern and accessible for everyone?
I will definitely be consulting with Tina if I get elected on the technological aspects of this matter. It is really hard, and I'm convinced that it is intentionally so, to figure out what the municipal government does and how it's actually doing it. I have, you know, postgraduate education in matters of politics and economics and history, and I've really studied this really hard for a very long time, and I'm just you know, it's taken me forever to actually figure it out. I don't have it all figured out, but you know, what we need to do is to stop pretending that municipal government is about garbage collection and potholes in the road. Municipal government matters, and it is not true, like most politicians want us to think, that there's nothing they can do. Their answer to everything always is, we can't, it's not us, it's another matter of government, it's complicated, it will take forever, and so on. No, it actually isn't. So we need a translation project. We need to actually turn what happens in the city. And I think I'm really good at that. If you look at my writings and you look at my appearances and so on, I think I'm becoming really good at translating what the city can and does do and what the city should and be able to do. We need to bring people into the government. We need to build people into the city hall. We need to actually ask people questions that matter to them and that they can discuss. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Put it out there. Last call for questions. We are running out of time. Joanne has been asking, trying to get this question asked. Got a bit of a preamble to it. We'll see what the candidates have to say about this, Joanne. So here it is. Council recently voted $100,000 to help resolve certain construction issues in a particular subdivision in response to a request for help from residents. All of the money went to a consultant and city staff without any accounting to the residents. The result was that the residents got none of the results they desired, but a large amount of money was spent. More communication between staff and the residents was so necessary. From the residents' point of view, all the money was wasted. So the question is, how do the candidates feel that that could be prevented in the future? And I'm afraid I don't have the context issue at hand here that Joanne's referring to, but on the general issue of the point that is made here, do you have a response to that, Skyler?
Yeah, I also would love to know which specific construction issue in subdivision, but that's okay. In a general sense, I think a big thing that we can do in the city is upskill our city workers and allow, because these people work hard. They go to work every day, and to be a public servant, in theory at least, your desires are good. You're looking to improve the public's well-being. One of the things that I'm looking at is if we upskill and build the capacity of our own public workforce, therefore we don't need to rely as much on outside consulting. I think that it's just a box check to say, we've consulted the experts and therefore we're good to go. But if we make more in-house experts, I think then that way, it might be more of an upfront cost, but we have more skills at our own base that we can rely on, so that we're not spending $50,000 on consulting fees, and instead the cost of that project would be halved, because it would only be the $50,000 from the city portion. And agreed, there needs to be more communication and transparency. And I think, to some of my previous answers, the more modern, transparent style of governance that I'm looking to bring would engage more people and make it more clear what's going on and how you can get engaged and make sure that your voice is heard.
Thank you. So again, Ivan, not knowing the background of this question, the specifics on the issue, though, the general issue of hiring consultants, what do you think about that?
I think that it's outrageous and that it's happening way too much, that people who have the experience and knowledge are being ignored. In this instance, we're talking about a neighborhood that knows what its needs are and is asking for a specific thing, I presume. And they're being brushed aside, and some consultant expert is being brought in to take forever to come up with the solution. I mean, that's City of Kingston for you. I mean, instead of housing people who are freezing outside in tents, mayor has set up a mayor's task force on housing, which takes a year to come back with their deliberations, which costs another $100,000, 90, I think, or whatever. We used to have municipally run daycares in the city. We used to have property standards officers. We don't have those anymore. The city has cut out so many departments and so many parts of the city government, which would make these consultants, this is outsourcing. This is scabbing, by the way. There should be people in the city paid to take care of these things, and maybe they are. This is I completely understand, and I'm frustrated just as much as you by this. The city should take care of its problems. It should have departments to address problems in the city, not create new consultancies for everything that arises. And no, the expert doesn't know better than a homeless person whether a homeless person needs a home or not. Homeless person needs a home. That's very clear. We don't need a task force.
Thank you.
to tell us that.
Thank you.
Actually,
Okay,
telling us not that, sorry.
Tina?
Yeah, that's really shocking. And if you look through the budgets and everything, you'll see a lot of our money is going to consultants. And not that it's an issue, but what the issue is, who are these consultants and why are we paying them $100,000? We have a lovely lady I met. She's a hydrogeologist in Kingston. And I'm sure, you know, if we need consulting done, we can have our own citizens and our experts doing it, either volunteer based or, you know, I don't understand the pricing on that. That just seems a little bit high. And again, with smart city technology, we will be able to see exactly where all this money is and who's getting it, because a lot of our money is going out of the city, unfortunately. And like Ivan said, we have the skill and the talent and the people already in the city. And I don't think that it's proper to be spending that much money on consulting. Not at all.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Anne. Is there a better way to deal with infrastructure projects such as Front Road at Elevator Bay, which has been under construction for several years now? In fact, it's stalled for several months, impacting traffic and local residents. Anne says that she understands the city must accept the lowest bid rather than the best bid when it comes to infrastructure contracts. Ivan, what do you think about that issue? Is there a better way to deal with infrastructure projects? Certain work needs to be done. You need to contract it out. Should you take the lowest bid or the best bid, like in a point scoring system?
There must be a better way. I've been driving over that road, in particular Front Road. This is crazy. This has been literally going on for like a decade, I think now. This road is being fixed. Of course, we shouldn't take the lowest bid. That's horrible. we should be only contracting unionized labor, and you know, if we have to contract, but the city should be doing this. City should be doing this. We are spending way more money on supposedly good, you know, lowest bidders who are employing workers who are not unionized, who don't have benefits, who are shipped in from New Brunswick and Quebec and working for minimum wage for a few months and then sent back, migrant laborers basically. City should be doing this work. City should be doing this work, and it should be the priority, of course, should be on quality of work. We need to fix the Front Road, and we need to stop throwing sewage into the river, because that keeps happening, and it doesn't even come up in the news. People don't even know about it. It's happened twice in recent history, just dumping sewage into the river because we're skimping every moment we can and on everything we can, because we're contracting out things and because we're going for the lowest common denominator. We deserve better. We deserve a lot better. And when I say that it should be quality, I mean, you know, Kingstonians should be hired by the city to work for 30, 40 bucks an hour, unionized, and do this work, and stay home and keep the money in Kingston.
Okay, thank you. Tina.
Thank you. Yes, one of the big problems with our developing and construction is, unfortunately, it's been monopolized, and there's basically 3 or 4 players in Kingston, and it's decided between them who is going to take the lowest bid. It's not that they're saying, oh yeah, we're going to do it for the lowest. It's, if you want the job, you basically have to offer the lowest bid. So I think we really have to deconstruct or demonopolize our construction services and start to have our local people, local workers that want to open a construction company or be part of the construction business. We have to give them an opportunity to do that. And another big thing is the planning around construction. It seems to me like I've been campaigning since July, and everybody in the city was gone. And as soon as everybody's back in September, it seems like, oh, let's start developing again. So that causes so much congestion, and it causes, you know, congestion and horrible roads, like, because we're developing so much in the last 3 years of the pandemic, our roads are just totaled. So I think we really have to look at creating more jobs around construction locally.
Okay, thank you. Skyler?
Yeah, some great points made so far. I do want to say that with construction in particular, it's very difficult because the upstart costs to begin a construction business are super expensive. So the barriers to entry are very high. That's why you often see this push towards monopolization or oligopoly, where there's only a few players in the market, because through time, the ones who have accrued the most capital can do the most projects and therefore continue building on their sort of empire, if you want to put it that way. So yeah, I completely agree, and it should not be just the lowest bid. I think we do need to have some sort of a reputation system where if you have done a poor job or your work is shoddy, I don't think that you should be able to develop again unless some X penalty is paid. There needs to be negative consequences, more than just reputational, but financial as well, for the lost benefit of that people are facing. For example, if people need to use Front Road or Ontario Street or whichever specific street is under construction and it's behind schedule, those businesses in that area are losing out. The residents in that area are losing out. And like what was mentioned in the chat as well, cyclists, like if a road is barred closed to cycle, now you're talking about potentially doubling your distance. If you're going Front Road, the next road over would be Bath Road, which is a significant extra distance. So we do need to hold these companies more accountable. And we do need to look into, when we're making these decisions, people's reputation. We're good.
Yes, I'm on to you. I'm on to you now. Okay, you know what? I think we have time for one last question, and I'm going to ask it before we get to our closing remarks. Okay, this is about taxes, property taxes. We hear about this when it's budget season every year at City Hall. How do you feel about the property tax rate? So for the past few years, the council has approved an average of 2.5% property tax increase year after year. So would you push to lower that rate, keep it the same, or do you think it needs to be higher to afford more services? Tina, go ahead.
Thank you. No, I don't think we need to be gouging our homeowners here. I think that if we fix the internal system, there's going to be a lot more money freed up to invest in municipal services, amenities, programs for our community. I don't think raising the tax on our property owners is the right way to go, especially now that our inflation rates after the pandemic are up close to 10% for our cost of living. So even, people that sold their home, they're getting a mill something. So now that the housing market is cooling, they're probably like, oh, like my mortgage payments are really high, my bank rate's really high. So they have to charge higher rent in order to make that happen. So I think it's really about safeguarding our property taxes and keeping it at the level where we're at right now, cleaning up the internal systems, having that extra money to put out, so we're not putting it all on just the property owner. Thank you.
Thank you. Skyler, on the current trend of property taxes increases around 2.5% every year. That's from the municipal side of things. Too much, too little, or too bad?
Yeah, with property tax rates, that's something that is very contentious because it's difficult to afford a bunch of city services that people want without raising the tax rate. So that's where we're going to need to be smart, because I agree that property tax rates need to be held as constant as possible right now, because we are in a period of a lot of economic turmoil. And the other thing is with respect to property taxes, the assessment value of the property is something that is factored in, which is related to the market rate. And if the market rate is inflated like it currently is, the tax rate could also be on a real scale much higher as well. So even 2.5%, but if your assessed value is now much higher, that same 2.5% is a lot more expensive. So we need to be reasonable, and we need to think about how we can cost cut, but not in a destructive way, but cost cut so that we can find more efficiencies, to find more money in the system so that we can deliver things in a smart way, and such as saving money on not $50,000 consulting fees. That's a way that we can free up more revenue from the city, because we're not legislatively allowed to operate in a deficit. So you have to be kind of an acrobat when it comes to balancing a budget. And we've been operating in a surplus, but we also do see that there's clearly a need for more city services. So we're going to have to look into an effective rate, but maybe something progressive could also work instead of just a flat rate. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Ivan.
I will look for a way to introduce some kind of progressive rate. It is very hard. It's almost impossible. There might be a way to do it. I've looked into it. It may be possible, in other words, to tax people according to how much they have, so that the people who are, you know, hardworking people living, you know, who own a house, have a mortgage and so on, and are making, I don't know, less than $200,000 or whatever, are not, you know, pushed out of their homes. So I will not raise taxes on regular Kingstonians. There are, however, obscenely wealthy Kingstonians among us, and there must be a way of making them pay their fair share. Now, I am not convinced that I am convinced that you know, my ambitious and realistic plan to build public rent geared to income housing and to house everybody and to introduce food program, etc., services for the people can be carried out with existing revenue. The problem is not just consultants. The problem is that we're investing in large landlords and construction companies and developers. They are taking so much money, and even our public housing corporation is being funded to become a for-profit, to rent at market rent and so on. So bridges, these projects, these millions are going to landlords, that needs to come to the city and to the people.
Okay. We went a little bit long, so your closing remarks are going to be about 10 seconds each. I'm kidding. 2 minutes for final remarks. Now we're going to do this in reverse order for the opening statements. So, Mr. Ivan Stoiljkovic, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead, please.
I'd like to take a moment to mention people who I am running with on a slate. This is a new way of doing things in Kingston anyway. I am a part of a group called People's Platform for Kingston, which are a frontline worker, a young people, a frontline worker who saves lives for a living at the beautiful integrated care hub, a young mother of two who is working and studying at a college at the same time, a brilliant young filmmaker who's telling stories of the struggles of the poor to survive, and a brilliant young mind studying sociology at Queens, who works with disabled people and speaks truth to power like few others in our town. I'm only a mayoral candidate who is running along with them. I'm the only one who has built a coalition and have demonstrated that I can actually work with other people and as a part of a group. This is a battle of David versus Goliath. The mayor has all the money of the super wealthy. He has TV ads. He can afford to send mail outs to the entire city. He can afford to pay his canvassers. They will, you know, his support is solid, and it is the top 10% or less of this town. I need you all to stand with me and to stand up to big landlords and developers, and we need to take our city back. It will be all of us standing together as one, not just me, and we need to leave no doubt as to what we want: a city without homelessness, a city without hunger, a green city that shows other cities the way forward into future, in which we're living with respect for Mother Earth and our indigenous brothers and sisters who are its guardians, a city in which everyone is safe, and a city we can all be proud of. Please take a few moments and vote for me and for the People's Platform of Kingston candidates over the next few days in advanced polls online or on October 24th. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, over to Mr. Skyler McArthur-O'Bienes.
All right, Bill, I got you here. I started a timer for myself, so therefore I will not go over. I was just going to say I want to thank you all for coming today, the other candidates, the people who have attended in the audience, and I'm sure the numerous other people who are going to watch this after it's been recorded. This is the sort of engagement that we need from our citizens. This is the sort of process that change happens by. And like what was mentioned by Ivan, this is an uphill battle. Being newer candidates in the city, it's expensive. It's really expensive and really challenging to get the sort of awareness that is needed. I'm still going door to door, like I mentioned, and people do not know that there's an election. People do not know who the candidates are. And you know what? I believe that it should be our responsibility to convince you that we're the right candidate for you. But I don't think it should be our responsibility alone to inform people that there is an election and who is even running. That's just something I wanted to mention, but I digress from that. I want to say that if you're like the many people who have reached out in my inbox and shown that there is an appetite for change in this city, please consider sharing this, speaking to your friends, because this sort of grassroots approach is the way that change happens. It's through word of mouth. This is a big, small city. It's very easy to speak to someone who you've never met before, but your best friend is friends with them. So we need to recognize the power that we all have to get our voices heard. Young people especially, they're notorious for not being represented in the voting population, and the elderly as well that are in care homes. We need to make sure that people that are often not represented are able to get their voice heard. So if you resonate with any of the points I've made today, please consider voting Skyler McArthur-O'Bienes at the polls, whether you do that online as of now or in person on election day on the 24th. Thank you, Bill, for moderating. And once again, thank you all for coming.
Look at that. Look at that. You're right on time, too. Thank you. And the last word goes to Ms. Tina Fraser. Your closing statements, please. 2 minutes.
Thank you again, Bill. I'm just going to mention a few things that I didn't get to say tonight about my vision and my planning for Kingston. Behind me, I have the district map of our beautiful city, and I've managed to plan and develop around that. So one of the ideas I have is to change John Counter Boulevard to our municipal lane. So all of our municipal services, OW, ODSP, anything like that, we'll have on John Counter Boulevard, because of the new bridge that's brought in here, the amount of traffic that's going to be congested and going throughout the city, it's just going to get worse. So by having a actual municipal lane, that will help to ease congestion. It'll help people to get there with one bus ride instead of having to take multiple different buses. I have an economic recovery plan, which focuses on local tourism, community microloans for low income and working class folks, combining our OW, ODSP programs, and introducing a cash transfer program, so that we need less bodies, less workers to do this, and providing people more autonomy within the community. And the last thing I just want to mention is supply chain diversification. As we see in the pandemic, we had a lot of scarcity happening, a lot of people buying up things. So with supply chain diversification, because Kingston we have rail, we have water, we have airplanes, we need to build and foster relationships with neighboring countries in regards to manufacturing and supply chain management. So we were less reliant on places like China. So yeah, if you really want change and a transformational leader speaking up for you, then Fraser for mayor should be your vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you to all the candidates for a very engaging couple of hours at this all candidates meeting. And thank you to those who joined us online and on your TV, Cogeco, and for asking some questions. Hopefully the responses will help you make an informed decision on election day, which of course is Monday, October 24th. So thank you again to everyone for watching, and you all have yourselves a good evening, and best of luck to all of the candidates on the campaign trail, okay? Take care.
Thanks very much, Bill. Great job.
Yeah, thank you. It was my pleasure, and again, yeah, very, very engaging, and it was great to hear from 3 of the 4 candidates in the race for mayor. So